Hey, for today's video, I thought I'd give people a little bit of guidance towards, what builds are good, what items synergize with each other. Now, I have about 30 hours with this game. You can see I've unlocked everything. I pretty much have 100% of this game. I've done every single task. All the cloaks unlocked. I have all the Arkana. And I have all the items. But the thing about this game is that there's just so much content. There's so many different ways that you can play that I don't know everything. But I'll go over a few good ones. If you're running a melee build, there's a couple good starting items you can get. Reducing cooldowns is nice, but what I found is the best is Sano's headband. This basically gives you super armor. You know, if you ever played any other kind of stylish action game, you know, if you have like a move with a couple points of super armor or auto guard. That's basically what this does. As long as you're using a move, you can't get hit out of it. So if you're gonna run with a melee build, this is, I wouldn't say it's necessary, but it helps quite a bit, especially if you're using moves that have like really long animations. Like, for instance, Blazing Blitz is one of the better like melee single target moves that you can use. Does a lot of damage on bosses. One of the best boss moves that I've found, but you're stationary for quite a while, so it is nice to have that. I'm kind of doing this as I go here, because there's so many different ways you can play. The dated sunglasses are actually pretty nice for melee builds, or just in general. There's a couple attacks in the game that get significantly easier to dodge if you have that on. The Pathfinder's map is great for speedruns. If you want to speedrun, I don't see why you wouldn't start with this, because it cuts so much of the time out of the run in general. Now the pirate hat gives you, or Pazu's favorite hat, gives you an extra life. So if you're at the beginning of the game, this can actually be pretty nice to have. Pathfinder's knapsack is pretty good, because it will heal you every time you go to a new map. Now what's interesting is these two items, as far as I know, I have never actually gotten them both in the same run. But they synergize, I could imagine they would synergize pretty well with each other. What this does is basically when you dash, you are completely invincible. You can't get hit by anything. Like you can go through, there's a couple laser beam type attacks in the game, you can just straight go through them. And this increases the distance that you dash, so this would make you invincible for longer, in theory. One of the problems with this game, and it's not really a problem, it's actually kind of a testament to how much content it has, is that it can be very hard to find all the synergies, especially if you're like me and you're playing this under an embargo and there's basically no one to talk to about the game at all, aside from developers. I'm sure once you guys have access to the game that more synergies will be found, but this is actually a pretty good item to have for melee builds as well, because it'll allow you to dash through projectiles and punish pretty quickly. Now I don't know what this synergizes with, but this is basically the Moon of Mahakala from Bayonetta. You push forward or tap forward and you'll parry. I can see this being pretty useful, but I haven't messed around with it yet. Now that I have the whole game unlocked, I might actually do some runs with this in the near future. Hummingbird Feather is really good right now, simply because the game generates a ridiculous amount of pits, and one of the problems is there's a lot of moves that make you dash, both melee and ranged or hybrid. And some of them have like pit protection, like they have like protection where you can't fall into the pit, and some of them don't. If you have this, then that won't be a problem. It doesn't protect you forever, you only get a few seconds before you need to go back on solid land. But it's enough to make a difference. You can actually use those moves far more safely. It also allows you to recover. If you knock a bunch of enemies into a pit and you would fall yourself, then they will fall and you won't. Now for offense, this just increases all damage dealt. This is a pretty good one. Dark Katana is really good if you're going to run melee. Ideally, you want to get something else to synergize with it, like the Assassin's Blade or Dice of the Nemesis, which actually, it seems to proc pretty often. It doesn't proc like super often, but it's enough to make a difference. Sometimes it'll make encounters a lot easier. So if you can get a bunch of crit items, then the Dark Katana is going to be really good. The Stygian turtle shell is pretty good because it prevents you from getting comboed to death. It is something I would like them to fix in the future. Sometimes, especially with the zombies and stuff, like when they get to like the level 3 power, which basically after every boss the enemies power up, like they rank up. You can get just comboed to death sometimes. I think that's something that they'll need to fix in the balance patch. I'm sure people will be complaining about it once the game gets released, but this actually does help quite a bit. It also prevents you from getting hit by multi-hit moves, especially the final boss. Pretty much all the bosses have a move that will hit you multiple times if you get hit by one projectile, so it's actually pretty nice to have this. But I'll be going over more synergies in the near future. So in terms of Arkana, now the problem is there's no like training mode in this. You have kind of a training mode here, but you can't actually put anything in those extra 2 slots to like test things out. I know Crypt of the Necrodancer had something like that where you could test synergies. That's definitely something I'd like them to add in the near future. I'm sure there's plenty of synergies that I don't even know of because I just haven't gotten those items in the same run. But I'll go ahead and I'll go through them through the menu here. So what Fueled Berserk does is it makes it so when you have this on, you can basically repeat your basic Arkana combo infinitely. So say you're using like the Wind Slash here. Let me put it on right now. Normally, like pretty much any other game that's combo based, you know, you have a limit to how many times you can use your basic attack. After that, there's a cooldown. You have to dash away or something. When you have the Fueled Berserk on, you can basically use it until the bar depletes. So what goes really well with this is Evading Zephyr. Evading Zephyr makes it so while you're using basic Arkana while you're moving, you're invincible. So if you have Fueled Berserk and Evading Zephyr, basically that's just guaranteed damage. You pretty much can just set up the enemies, and then you pop Evading Zephyr and Fueled Berserk, and you just mash. Now how you can make this better is the Ice Daggers. The Ice Daggers are already really fast. They don't have much hit stop at all. So if you put on Fueled Berserk, and you get near a wall or you push something into a pit, you just do a ridiculous amount of damage. What also goes well with Fueled Berserk is... Let me see if I can find it. Lightning Aspect. If you can get both of these on, I can't actually show you because they both occupy the standard Arkana slot. But this will make it so while you're mashing your basic Arkana, you're going to be doing a bunch of just damage over time from your aura at the same time. Shock Assault is pretty good for single targets as well. It's actually pretty good for just putting things in hit stun if you have, or rather, if you have a bunch of enemies around you, but it does good damage single target as well. Card Ice Prime is pretty good. It's like Strider's Ouroboros. It protects you. So you can use this with Fueled Berserk or any other melee moves and just do a bunch of extra damage. Some of these Arkana actually haven't even gotten in a battle yet, or an actual run. Shearing Chain is a pretty good melee move. When you have it upgraded, it does more hits. Definitely one of my favorites. Pretty much works with anything. Rushing Typhoon has a lot of hit stun, so you can combo into other things. Like, let me demonstrate here. Rushing Typhoon and Distortion Beam should work. I have to aim it properly. Like I say, you're still in hit stun there, so it actually works pretty well. So most of the Chaos Arkana are pretty good. The way that you unlock these is you have to beat the game a total of 8 times. Every time past the first one, or every time from the first one, you would get another Chaos Arkana. I do not know if they unlock in random orders or not. I pretty much just got them, I assume is what the normal order is, but they may be random. I'm not entirely sure. Phantom Brigade is pretty nice. Now you can imagine how much damage that does on a single target, so it's actually pretty good for melee builds. But Distortion Beam is good too, because you can use that and then put them in a bunch of hit stun and then combo into something else. Like that. No Parade is good AoE. It's a pretty good melee move as well. Got some nice AoE on it, does some damage over time as well. Now this is definitely one of the best melee moves in the game, but its main weakness is the long animation. So if you don't have Sano's headband, or you don't have some way of protecting yourself, you can actually take more damage than you deal, which is kind of unfortunate. I wish there were more just straight melee moves, but a lot of them are more hybrid type moves. Mock Stunner is great. I actually just tried this one for the first time. It's really good when it's upgraded because it increases the distance travel. So you can have a big group of enemies just stunned and hit stun. They're both in the stun like status effect, and they're both in hit stun at the same time. So you can set up whatever you want after that. Wind Flurry is pretty good. I think this is pretty early in the unlock pool. Like, you can use a little bit, or you can use it all at once. And the upgrade makes it pierce through enemies, but the attack range is lowered, so it's going to be really good for melee as well. Now for dashes, the only ones I really like using is Gust Burst, because this allows you to combo. It could be really useful at the beginning of the game when you don't have an extra 2 or 3 Arkana to work with to, you know, into your rotation. So you can do stuff like this. So you can do like a basic chain. Combos like that. Now, while you're in that little animation here, little water shield, you're actually invincible. So if you get it enhanced, it actually does protect you for quite a bit, but you can also just use a Limos Leaf and use whatever dash you want. The other ones just feel kind of weak. They don't really seem to have much utility, but I haven't really gotten them in a run yet. Now the dash is nice because it has very little cooldown, and while you're in the rift, while you're teleporting, you actually can't get hit by anything. So even if you go through like a straight thick laser attack, which there's several of in this game, mostly from the bosses, you can't get hit at all. You'll just straight go through it. But the weakness of this dash is that it has no offensive capabilities, so it's basically a whole Arkana in your slot that's not doing any damage at all. So all the other dashes do damage in some capacity, but this one doesn't. Let me check the items here one more time, and then I think I'll end the video. A lot of these are self-explanatory, but there's a lot of really good ones that you can start with. Dark Katana is a good one to start with. If you want an extra life, this is pretty good. Having extra armor is great as well. Limos Leaf and the Greased Boots I already went over. Stygian Turtle Shell is a good starting item. Hummingbird Feather. If you want to just have decreased cooldowns, you can check can use either the pocket watch or the pendulum. The nocturnal sundial, this makes it so sometimes it's just a proc chance where your move won't go on cooldown at all. Now, it doesn't seem to proc very often. I don't think there's any way to increase it, but it has made some encounters a lot easier in some cases, so you could consider that to be a good starting item. Sano's headband has definitely carried me through a lot. I already went over why that move is, or Arkana, or item is good. Pathfinder's map is just a great overall item, especially if you want to speedrun. It cuts down a lot of travel time. I was able to get the speedrun achievement by like over 10 minutes just by using this on like my first try. So it's definitely a pretty indispensable item, but it doesn't seem to spawn very often. Now the Insignia of Legend, it says that it doesn't really say what it does, but what it actually does is it puts you at rank 3 or endgame difficulty from the start. Unfortunately, it makes the game into a slog because you have like nothing to work with. So I find it to be pretty boring. I talked to the developers and they said that there's no reward for it or anything. So if you want a challenge, this is there, but I didn't really find it too entertaining. I found it actually pretty frustrating, especially since you have like nothing to work with. Anyway, the rest is pretty much up to you. I mean, there's no real bad starting item. I think what's nice about the starting items, they allow you to play the game differently in a way that you normally can't do in roguelikes. You know, normally in a roguelike, you're completely at the mercy of RNG. You know, sometimes you'll start with something really fun, and then the next 10 runs you'll just get a bunch of trash. And in this game, that's actually not an issue. And the items in this, most of them are pretty interesting. There's some that are pretty shitty, like this one. All this one does is it just makes it so you hold the button down and it makes it so you don't have to mash when you use your basic Arkana. I don't know why you'd want to start with that, but most of the items in general are actually pretty interesting. So there's no real wrong answer for what you want to start with, but those are some pretty basic guidelines. Once I get some more synergies and actual runs, I'll try to record them and help people out. Thanks for watching. Peace.